Cuban classical composers, Ignacio Cervantes. My name is Roxana, and I'm a classical pianist from Cuba. I live in California. I decided to make this channel inspired in my own heritage and talk about the Cuban music and its influence in the world and the main composers for the pianistic literature throughout history. This is the second part to this series of talk I'm trying to do here for you, or that I'm putting together for you. And second great composer, most important composer of the 19th century is Ignacio Cervantes. So as I did in the first part, I put together my notes so that I can convey this message to you in a more pleasant way to be received. To start, let's talk about the epoch, the times where Ignacio Cervantes was born. In the 19th century, good music was an inseparable part of the education of the Cubans. There was already an extraordinary affection for this art form. Cuban theaters were housing the performances of world-class musicians. The opera being the preferred genre with its theatrical value. Chamber music became very popular in smaller ambits. Just like in Europe, homes that cultivated and inspired the desire and value for such were Peñalver Count, El Conde de Peñalver, en la Alameda de Paula, en La Habana, Onofre Montejón, en la calle de San Miguel, y la de Manuel Saumel, en La Reina. Residence of Fernando Arizzi, en Tulipán, El Cerro. These tertulias set the desire for the increasing practice of such reunions and therefore a growing interest for the music appreciation. Cuba awakened dramatically in the 19th century. The growth of the United States as an independent nation, the collapse of Haiti as a sugar-producing colony, Spanish protective policies, and the ingenuity of Cuba's Creole business class all converged to produce a sugar revolution on the island. In a scant few years, Cuba was transformed from a sleepy and important island into the major sugar producer in the world. Slaves arrived in increasing numbers. Large states squeezed out smaller ones. Sugar supplanted tobacco, agriculture, and cattle as the main occupation. Prosperity replaced poverty, and Spain's attention replaced neglect. These factors, especially while most of Latin America was breaking with Spain, Cuba remained loyal. The independence struggle and beginning of US hegemony. Toward the end of the 19th century, Cuban loyalty began to change as a result of Creole rivalry with Spaniards for the governing of the island, increased Spanish despotism and taxation, and the growth of Cuban nationalism. These developments combined to produce a prolonged and bloody war. The 10 Years' War is against Spain, 1868 to 1878. But it failed to win independence for Cuba. At the outset of the Second Independence War, 1895 to 1898, Cuban independence leader José Martí was killed. As a result of increasingly strained relations between Spain and the United States, the Americans entered the conflict in 1898. Already concerned about its economic interest on the islands and its strategic interest in a future Panama Canal, the United States was aroused by an alarmist yellow press after the USS Maine sank in Havana harbor on February 15 as the result of an explosion of undetermined origin. In December 1898, with the Treaty of Paris, the United States emerged as the victorious power in the Spanish-American War, thereby ensuring the expulsion of Spain and U.S. tutelage over Cuban affairs. These were the times where the slaves uprised and lots of uncertainty with the island governor Leopoldo Donelli. La conspiración de la escalera took place. Music in Cuba has always been a spiritual release, and it still is. The love for music and theater in those times was a means to deal with the tranquility of the times, and it still is. Don Pedro Cervantes and Doña Soledad Cauap were the parents of Ignacio Cervantes. Ignacio Cervantes, life. Cuba's most important musician of the 19th century. No one ranked higher in solidity of craft, innate good taste, distinctive ideas, elegance of style, a full sound manifested even in his minor works. Ignacio Cervantes was born in La Habana, Cuba on July 31st of 1847. He found no obstacles in devoting himself to his artistic vocation. His father had a great respect for the musical profession. He placed his son to study with Nicolás Ruiz Espadero, highly regarded professor and most expensive in those times. In 1865, at 18, he was sent to Paris to enter the Imperial Conservatory. There he studied with Marmontel and Alcan. Cervantes won the grand prize for piano in 1866, playing Herz's Fifth Concerto. In 1868, he won awards in harmony for works that are still preserved and reveal an exceptional knowledge. Among his students' papers, a fugue was found and some variations and a given theme which foreshadowed the writing of the danzas. In Paris, Cervantes led the life of a busy student, wasting no time. He aspired to the Prix of Rome, but was not admitted for being a foreigner. This reassured us how certain he was of his talent. Before dying, Rossini admitted him to his intimate circle, saw him down at his Pantagruelian table, and revealed to him the secrets of an armoire filled with wigs. Just a fun, revealing, curious note. Franz Liszt held him in great esteem as a pianist. Upon Cervantes' return to Cuba, the circle of accomplished performers was small. However, he wasn't discouraged. He gave recitals playing various Beethoven sonatas, works by Chopin, Mendelssohn, Liszt, as well as Bach preludes and fugues. He was an admirable pianist. In December 1832, Cervantes married Maria Amparo Sanchez Richo. They had 14 children. He would jokingly said that he was aspiring to form an orchestra with his offspring. In those days, Cubans were fighting for their independence in the Manigua. In 1875, Cervantes was urgently brought to the Captain General, who boasted of his admiration for him and told him that the Spanish knew that Ignacio Cervantes was donating the money collected in his concerts to the insurrectionists, and he told him, "Leave before I am obligated to throw you in jail. Where do you want to go?" "To the United States," he replied. "It is the closest to Cuba, and there I can continue to help." Stunned, the Captain General let him leave. Cervantes lived 4 years in the US giving concerts. His artistic and economic situation was brilliant in 1879. The 10-year War, 1868 to 78, ended with the Treaty of El Sanjón. Antonio Maceo had prepared exile instead of a peace he could not accept. Cervantes' father was then very ill. Cervantes returned in time to see him die. He stayed with his family in Cuba, and when the war flared up again, he escaped to Mexico, where he was given great honors. President Porfirio Diaz generously protected him and encouraged him to stay in the country. Ignacio Cervantes, compositor. Ignacio Cervantes composed a diverse repertoire for orchestra, chamber orchestra, opera, zarzuela, songs, but its immortality as a composer is due to the danzas for the piano. Notable compositions are the Waltz Capriccio, Anhelos, Serenata Cubana, Repertoire, and all of the genuinely danzas cubanas, which there were 45 of them. The danzas by Cervantes are masterpieces that encompass a prompt and spontaneous melodic inspiration with an outstanding creative rhythm and harmony, impeccable and refined voice work within each and every masterpiece, creating a perfect pianistic conception without excess or deficiencies, with a very elevated and direct message. I will pause here to play one of my favorite dances, Ilusiones Perdidas, which I think is a good example of showing the voice work and also the very romantic influence in the era. Specifically, he used to love Chopin and was influenced, his compositions were greatly influenced by his work. I hope you enjoy. All dances are different. No two are alike. They are all brief, rich, full of expression, witty, criolla, alive but with great finesse and complexity. Like great composers of the romantic tendency, Cervantes brought to classical music the Cuban soul in the most universal way. Cervantes was the miniaturist by excellence. It is important to remember the origins of this genre, which is the contradanza, a dance originated in England and the French brought it to Martinique and Haiti, and from there to Cuba. In Cuba, it became a Cuban contradanza, Contradanza Cubana, with its own original rhythm. Its greater creator was Manuel Saumel, which Cervantes dedicated the danza homenaje. Please watch Contradanza Cubana, Manuel Saumel, as the part 1 of this series, Contradanza Cubana, Manuel Saumel. The Cuban Danza is a musical form that develops to its full splendor on the second half of the 19th century, all due to Cervantes. Ignacio Cervantes was the best composer of the 19th century in Cuba. He was a great concert pianist. Chopin was one of his preferred composers that influenced his musical point of view. Cervantes made all his danzas in a binary measure, 2/4, with the exception of one danza named Cortesana in 3/4. He kept in all his danzas the traditional form in 2 parts. Generally, each part has 16 measures and sometimes 8 on the first part. It was Cervantes that created the Cuban Danza, originated from the Cuban Contradanza. Like others, his masterpieces contain a very Cuban humoristic name, and anecdotes behind most pieces are what we call humorismo criollo. The Cuban danzas are in 2 parts. Again, they are microforms, very small, concise piece of work, and has the influence of the Romantic era. Therefore, these are pieces that are mostly concert pieces that are meant to be performed, to listen to. That type of danza that you listen to, still with the rhythm and life of the essence of the Cuban flavor. I hope you enjoyed this talk and that is of any value to you, as I express in a very concise way about Ignacio Cervantes' life, music in the ambit of the second half of the 19th century in Cuba during the Romantic era. And well, I'll be back to talk about our next composer, which is one of my favorites. Thank you very much. I wish you a wonderful, beautiful day. See you soon. Bye.